Midnight Creek Cave Nightmare. On May 11, 1996, an 11-member expert team entered to assess gas and structural hazards in Midnight Creek Cave, California. The cave had been closed since 1994 due to dangerous hydrogen sulfide in the water. Among the team, Richard B.R., Colin O'Neill, Kurt Wexel, and Renee Van Roek. The team split into groups, setting gas detectors and sampling water. The primary concern? Hydrogen sulfide, a gas that displaces oxygen and kills without warning. Midnight Creek Cave contained narrow stream tunnels and vertical chutes carved by water. The air temperature was stable, but the water flow remained cold and forceful. Visibility was limited to what carbide lamps and headlamps could illuminate. Richard's group moved through the upstream section uneventfully. Returning downstream, Richard stepped onto a slick, moss-covered stone. He slipped and dropped into a hidden vertical chute, 3 feet in diameter. The fall wedged his body upright with his torso twisted and legs pinned. His head was forced downward, below the stream's frigid surface. The icy water filled his nostrils, mouth, and ears within seconds. He strained to lift his head above water, relying solely on neck and shoulder strength. Each attempt created intense muscular fatigue and sharp joint pain. The chute's smooth limestone walls offered no traction for leverage. Downward pressure from the stream compounded the compression. Colin, witnessing the fall, moved to assist, but also slipped into the chute. His impact forced Richard deeper, compacting his ribs and shoulder joints. Richard's breath became shallower as his chest cavity compressed. Renee and Kurt arrived, extracting Colin but finding Richard immobile. Water continued surging around Richard, infiltrating his airway with every failed lift. His shoulder jammed against the jagged interior wall, causing localized trauma. Blood flow was restricted. Extremities began to numb in the cold. Kurt and Renee searched for alternate access beneath the chute. Richard's respirations became erratic, with repeated submersions. Gagging and coughing produced abdominal spasms and fatigue. With no movement possible, his core temperature dropped steadily. Below the chute, the passage was partially water-filled and claustrophobic. Renee and Kurt squeezed through, scraping against limestone in the tight confines. At the base, they reached Richard's lower body, coordinating a plan. Van arrived and without delay joined the rescue effort. From above, Colin secured Richard under his arms. From below, Renee and Van pushed his legs upward carefully. Each motion caused strain on Richard's dislocated shoulder. Cold water had softened his skin. Abrasions appeared on contact. The chute walls resisted every inch of progress. Richard twisted slightly to assist, triggering a jolt of hip and rib pain. After several attempts, his torso began to rise. Water level dropped marginally, giving him a brief reprieve to breathe. Colin pulled with renewed effort, finally dragging Richard onto a ledge. His limbs were stiff, face pale, and breathing labored but present. The team began their exit, Richard guiding them despite compromised vision. His glasses were broken, and cave lighting distorted his perception. Navigation became slow. He relied entirely on memory. At the cave mouth, they emerged after hours, battered but intact. Banshee Hole Tragedy. Under a late November sky in 1992, 4 cavers approached the entrance of Banshee Hole in Tennessee. The cave's notorious 95-foot vertical drop loomed before them like a warning. They secured a single rope rig at the surface, preparing for the descent into darkness. One of them, less experienced, wore a rig assembled from a flyer and improvised webbing. One by one, they rappelled into the shadowy maw below. The entrance chamber was wide but quickly narrowed into a tight descending corridor. Moisture glazed the cave walls, water trickled along hidden fractures underfoot. The air was cool and still, thick with the scent of wet limestone. Chalk marks were left on the walls, crude waypoints in the sprawling underground. Deeper in, the cave expanded into a large chamber riddled with jagged outcrops. The uneven terrain forced them to move cautiously, lights scanning each hazard. At the chamber's end, a narrow passage lay behind a veil of flowstone. They paused briefly before the leader urged a return. The real test awaited during the long vertical ascent to the surface. The victim, encouraged to go first, attached his gear and began the climb. His foot slings hung unevenly, and his chest harness, rigged from webbing, lacked seat support. Inch by inch he rose, the chest-mounted carabiner holding him upright but cutting into his ribs. His legs strained, arms pulled, but with no seat harness, the load bore directly on his torso. As he neared the overhanging lip 8 feet from the top, the struggle intensified. He reached and pushed, but the angle required upper body power he couldn't muster. The rig bit deeper into his chest with every failed attempt. Sweat mixed with cave condensation as he hung, trembling, in place. 2 companions ascended to assist, shouting instructions and offering their hands. Their efforts to pull or reposition him failed, the harness now acting like a noose. For 3 hours they tried, webbing reinforcement turning into entrapment. One climber was dispatched to seek help, leaving 2 behind to wait with the suspended man. The victim's head slumped forward slightly, breath becoming shallow and rasping. Muscles in his legs began to cramp from blood restriction. His hands clenched and relaxed, fingers numb from suspended strain. The cold crept into his bones as time stretched brutally onward. The rescuers arrived arrived within 40 minutes, fast for cave response. They descended with practiced speed, carrying technical gear and portable lighting. One look at the victim confirmed the worst. Compression symptoms had already begun. The skin around his harness contact points was pale and discolored. His voice was weak, slurred from reduced circulation to his brain. They stabilized him, reinforced the webbing, and began rigging for controlled descent. Their coordinated effort shifted him just enough to slacken the load. Then, the final maneuver. Webbing released, harness freed, his body went limp. A rescuer caught him, but he had already collapsed. His pulse was erratic, then vanished. Cardiac arrest began. CPR was initiated immediately within the narrow confines of the cave. Compressions echoed off stone as rescue breaths filled the stale air. Despite 20 minutes of effort, there was no revival. The cave, once alive with the urgency of motion, fell still. Later analysis confirmed death from compression syndrome, blood made toxic by prolonged pressure. The harness had turned into a device of internal suffocation, unseen but fatal. The team emerged carrying a body that had once ascended with them in hope. Banshee Hole sealed its silence once more, indifferent to the pain it had borne. Blue Spring Cave Tragedy. Blue Springs State Park, a sanctuary of pristine waters and lush Florida wilderness, hides its darkest secret beneath the surface. The spring pumps out 100 million gallons a day, creating an aquatic artery of life and danger. Samuel Slack, 36, hardened by years of cave diving, suits up with the calm of a man who lives between two worlds. His partner, Daniel Vanickel, mirrors his preparation, their routine forged in trust and repetition. Blue Spring's underwater cave system sprawls in tangled limestone veins, some barely wider than a human chest. The descent begins, a slow plunge into filtered silence where time dissolves in the cold blue. Light dims quickly, replaced by the concentrated beams of their headlamps scanning the stone corridors. Every motion underwater is deliberate, each breath a calculated use of precious air. Samuel leads, navigating the winding passage with a confidence earned over thousands of dives. Daniel follows, eyes sharp, scanning for danger, for change, for anything unnatural. Depth increases, pressure rises, and nitrogen accumulates in their blood silently. They reach the target chamber, a vaulted limestone room shaped by eons of submerged erosion. Visibility remains high, but pressure whispers. Warnings only trained bodies can hear. Then Samuel stops, spins slightly, and flashes the universal signal for distress, a hand drawn across the throat. Daniel freezes for half a second, adrenaline surging as he rushes to assist. Samuel's hands tremble as he fumbles for his regulator. Something's gone catastrophically wrong. Daniel offers his own mouthpiece, but Samuel grabs it clumsily, panic overtaking protocol. Their bodies tangle briefly, the regulator exchange jerky and uncoordinated. Samuel's breaths come too fast, sharp inhalations burning through their shared air. He begins thrashing slightly, his limbs stiffening in rising panic. In the enclosed passage, the water churns with every movement, reducing visibility. Samuel claws at Daniel's arms, desperate for breath, his mask fogging with exertion. Daniel yanks back the regulator, forcing a reset, only to see Samuel's eyes wide with terror. The cave's pressure squeezes around them, magnifying the chaos. Samuel's chest heaves as he begins hyperventilating, each gasp pulling death closer. Bubbles burst from his mouth at erratic intervals, the rhythm of someone losing control. He no longer signals. His hands float, useless, twitching with ineffective motion. Daniel makes a split-second decision to ascend. Fast, too fast. The cave ceiling races past, the dive computer flashing furious warnings. Nitrogen, inert below, awakens in his blood, forming tiny lethal bubbles. He breaks the surface in a silent scream, muscles stiff and vision already fading. Rescuers scramble around him, pulling his half-conscious body into a boat. Through the haze of decompression sickness, Daniel insists on diving again. Against protocol, he suits up and descends, driven by something deeper than logic. Every stroke downward is a defiance of pain, his joints burning with unseen damage. He reaches the target depth, visibility returning to surreal clarity. Samuel floats there, still, limbs extended in an almost cruciform suspension. The water is still around him as if mourning. Daniel reaches out, hand trembling, and touches Samuel's shoulder. The skin is cold, the wetsuit lifeless, the weight of failure unbearable. He fits a flotation collar to the body and signals the recovery team. The ascent is slow, mechanical, like ferrying a statue from the depths. On the surface, medics are waiting with stretchers and oxygen masks. CPR begins immediately. immediately, but there is no rhythm left to revive. Daniel stares, barely able to sit up, face pale with nitrogen sickness. Samuel is pronounced dead on the shore as Daniel is wheeled away to a hyperbaric chamber. Inside the chamber, Daniel shakes uncontrollably, legs twitching with nerve misfires. His mind replays the last look in Samuel's eyes again and again. The bubbles in his bloodstream threaten stroke, paralysis, death. Hours pass in isolation. Daniel's hearing distorted, his vision swimming. Doctors monitor every breath, ready for sudden cardiac events. Daniel survives, barely. His body recovering, but his psyche fractured. Blue Springs flows on, its perfect clarity hiding the trauma it witnessed. News spreads quietly in the diving community. Another brother lost. Gear is cleaned, tanks stored, but Samuel's absence is a weight no one can lift. The cave is closed for a week, a silent nod to the dead.